Just hold on.
Okay.
Hey, everybody, we're here for the new episode of the RLG Reviews show where we review movies. And today we're talking about Oppenheimer. I'm here with Putty, the Puttyman. You can check out his channel, be in the description below. So we're just going to jump right into this review. I don't really think spoilers can exist for this because it's a historical event that actually happened and it's already a spoiler.
Well, first off, I want to put this out there for those that may not be familiar, but so this is a prequel to Pearl Harbor, and
This is not really a prequel. It kind of takes place at the same time.
What you gonna say? You gonna say?
This is in the Pearl Harbor universe of movies.
Well, hey, Matt Damon's in it, and Ben Affleck is in the other one. And Casey, I mean, come on, I mean, we're going.
And aren't they both in Saving Private Ryan? So, that solves all of these problems. Anyways, so Oppenheimer is about J. Robert Oppenheimer, who created the nuclear bomb and dropped them on Japan. Well, he didn't, but somebody did.
Yep.
Probably Truman, who was the president. I think.
Spoiler
I don't know
alert.
anything about American presidents. So okay, we'll talk about this, I guess, quickly, and then open it to a more broad conversation. Just out of the gate, I think all the acting was really well done.
A lot. It's a big star-studded. Like, it kept on popping up with people. I go, holy, he's in this movie. He's in this movie. Like, I feel like the trailer doesn't do justice on how many big personalities are in this.
Yeah,
and from the get-go, you could tell it's a Christopher Nolan movie. That's all I'm gonna say.
I also really like the use of like some smaller actors, right? Like people you would recognize, but they're not like mega stars, you know?
Exactly. Yep.
And I really enjoyed a lot of that. Like all the performances are really good. So I mean, visually I liked it. I think the quality of the movie looks really good, but I'm also there's this whole. Did you watch it in IMAX?
No, I just watched it. It was just basic theater. It wasn't like anything IMAX really. But I mean, it's still looking. Here's the thing. Again, you're gonna see if you're familiar with Christopher Nolan's work, you're gonna see a very Christopher Nolan look to it. But for some reason, a lot of times either it really works or it doesn't. And I feel like it really worked in this one. Like for the type of film it is, Christopher Nolan's cinematography, the way he says some things, feels like it really works for what the drama they're trying to put here. I mean, of course, things are exaggerated, but you know,
I think the visuals and the sound design were excellent. I we'll get to like issues in a second, but I really, for a movie that's filmed all in rooms of people talking, it looked really good. But also at the same time, I don't understand the logic of filming this movie in IMAX when it completely did not need IMAX whatsoever.
Well, there's so many times in the movie where it's like the visuals fit for the time, you know what I mean? Like as far as like the time frame. So you don't honestly want to have that picture perfect film that you don't really need it. I mean, here's my thing. Another thing I want to point out as far as not even just visual, but like the pacing is like, I mean, I guess we'll get more depth later, but like the pacing, like even my friend told me, he said it feels good that for people that aren't familiar with the story, that it kind of helps push you into the story and lead you in, especially with things you may not have knowledge of, but still make you feel like you're pretty intelligent when it comes to the movie. You know what I mean? And that's what I really appreciated about it, was like it didn't hold your hand necessarily and make you feel stupid, but at the same time, it didn't overly push too many physics situations. It just stuck to the point of what you basic knowledge.
I agree with you 100%, but I also think it needed to be more sciencey. Like
I get it.
You know how like Interstellar was like super sciencey, or like Tenet even. This one kind of, even for a movie about science, doesn't really science. Like it kind of just doesn't science.
Well, I think that's well, see, the reason why I like the way they did it is because you got to think, Interstellar and those, they have more of a visual appeal. This does have a visual appeal, but all the talking, though, I feel like it would have been weighed down if you put way too much more.
But there's another aspect to that, too, right? Where, okay, so to compare it to Tenet again, number one, it's, if anyone's seen Tenet, the beginning of Tenet has this really awkward editing where it constantly keeps cutting between things, and you really, really, really have to pay attention, or you will not understand how that thing fits where it's supposed to fit. And I think I found it kind of unnecessary, but I'll speak more on that later. But the whole movie's like that at this, and it feels like a giant montage over rather than a movie. Not to say that it's
I
not
get
a
it.
good movie, because I do think this was good, but that's one of the things I didn't like. It felt choppy and indirect, and I understand that he was going for like a non-linear storytelling thing, but
Mhm.
there's a lot of moments where it tells you like a science thing and it doesn't explain any of it to you, and then just cuts to another scene and you're like, well, how am I supposed to understand what the hell they just told me? And
Yeah,
then it shows you something that makes no sense and then goes to another scene, and then you're back in the story, you're like, okay, and then it shows me another random thing for no. And a few of those cutouts, like I'll call it cutouts because it's kind of like a Family Guy episode, but they had no relevance to anything. And it was like, this movie's already so long, you didn't need all of this.
well,
One of my
especially
go.
well, I was gonna say, well, especially moments that we'll bring up later on where he was more in his head, if you know what I'm talking about,
Yeah.
where it was like I'm like I was wondering why it happened, then it was revealed later, and then it still didn't make sense why that happened. You know, I mean,
No,
we'll get to it when we get to
100%.
the point.
I
Yeah,
get that fully, and it's like, so to I don't want to keep harkening back to Tenet, but there's
yeah.
a good explanation is, like I said, the way that it's cut up in the beginning and it's hard to follow. There's also a scene when there's a girl in Tenet. Sorry if you haven't seen Tenet, Putty, but
It's
she
fine.
explains the meaning of Tenet to him, where it's like everything is going backwards in time and forwards in time at the same time, and she's showing the thing, but she's explaining it so fast with no, and they don't want you to understand. Like, it's
Right,
not
right.
an explanation for the audience. She's telling him, and you're just there while it's happening. And then it cuts away, and you're like, "What the fuck did they just tell me?" Sorry for swearing, but
Yeah.
and it was like they did that a lot in this movie, where it's like they gave you talk, 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 cut away, and you're like, "Okay, what was I supposed to get from this? I'm so confused." Um, but yeah, everything kind of plays out by the end. So like if there's stuff you missed or didn't understand, by the end you kind of are like, okay, I get it.
Mm.
I don't like the non-linear storytelling here, for the reason that I don't think it was necessary at all. If it was me, I would have had this movie start at the beginning and end at the end, but I would have, the only thing is I would have had cutaways to him doing the trial thing. So
Yep.
yeah, I would have just had little breaks where it's showing you the future when he's in the trial. Everything else I would have told completely linear, and it would have made the movie so much easier to watch.
Mhm.
And like, it's not for anyone out there who thinks like, oh, Nolan, he's so smart, I'm just an idiot because I couldn't understand this movie. No, you're not. It's purposely cut up to be oddly distracting. There was no reason for it to be like that.
Yeah.
It doesn't serve a benefit to the story. Like, and then you keep getting the cutaways with Florence Pugh, and
Okay.
her character, I understand the point of including it, but by the end of the movie you're like, no, I didn't need to see any of these
I,
scenes.
I, but I've got to say it right now. I will never ever watch Black Widow or go to a board meeting ever the same again.
Yeah,
Because
but
that scene alone, that one scene in the meeting, which we'll get into later when I guess we're probably just to say we're going to spoil anything. Like it was so awkward when we're watching it in theater because it was just like I get they were trying to show some emotion from his wife,
that
but it was
scene to
like
me was the most relevant of all of the scenes with her.
really,
That's the one that made the most sense, because we'll open that up in a second. So
yeah.
let's
Okay.
go right now. Uh, what's your score for this?
I actually, so like I said, I still enjoyed it. I get where you're coming from, things. So, I mean, me, it's like I actually think 8 out of 10. Oh no, because see, that's hard to say. I'm comparing it to nowadays
Don't
movies, and I
compare it
feel
to
like,
me, because I'm gonna give it a high score.
well, no, I'm not comparing it to. Here's my thing. I'm going to compare it to Christopher Nolan movies. There are better movies. You know what I mean? But it's just like it's still a good movie. And so compared to what we get as far as trash out in the world, that's a really good movie. You know what I mean? So yes, I give it an 8 out of 10. I really do like this movie. I feel like even though, yeah, like you said, it feels like there's moments like what do we get there and things like that. It helped later on that I got to understand a little more. if you're familiar with Christopher Nolan, you're going to totally notice the shots that are Christopher Nolan shots. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? You
the
just
whole
can't help
movie
miss
is
it.
Christopher Nolan. It's
Yeah,
like it's
yeah.
overly Christopher Nolan, if anything.
But at the same time, if you're not familiar with it, I feel like it gives it its extra charm that people were going to like it. You know what I mean? Robert Downey Jr. I feel like there's going to be some actors that are going to get some nods either in some way when it comes to like Oscars or something
They
like
both
that.
will. Robert
Yeah,
Downey Jr. and Cillian Murphy will, or Killian Murphy, however you say it, will
yeah.
both get it.
Honestly, Robert Downey Jr. was the highlight. I was when I first saw him, I go, "Oh, Iron Man!" I made a little joke about it. But then, like as I'm watching it again, when you're an actor that can take you out of the character and not look at it, outside of one point in the movie where I said, "Please say I am Iron Man," you know what I mean? Like I just
You
wanted
know
to
who I really liked? By the way, hold on. I'll give it a score first. 8.3
okay,
for me.
okay,
8.3.
cool.
And now we're gonna open up general discussion. If you just came for the review, that's the review. Now we're gonna talk about it in depth. Um, my favorite guy was Harold and Kumar's neighbor. Because
I
how the
thought,
hell did they pull that off? He was
well,
really good.
well, it's even funny because my friend made a joke and he said, "Hell, Drake and Josh." You know, like, oh,
Yeah.
good lord, that's the thing about this movie. There's so many actors like a Rami Malek out of nowhere coming into
And
scene. I was
he's
like,
really good
oh
in that little tiny bit at the
yes,
end.
yes. Like, but again, I'm gonna still put out there Robert Downey Jr. I mean, the lead is the best, but like Robert Downey Jr. He, since his whole thing with the Iron Man, he's had more opportunities to get better roles. But honestly, this might be his best performance he's ever done. I really believe it. I mean, unless you
I'm
could tell me
gonna
something better.
say it's pretty up there.
Yeah.
I do still think he was so good in Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. Like,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
but either way, this is definitely up there. It's inarguable.
Yeah, you can tell, especially towards the end, especially since we can talk now, right before, because again, the part where he actually realized he's in trouble and the press is outside. First off, I did want him to walk out and do a press conference. I was ready to say I am Iron Man just for the fun of it, but at the same time, that moment before I even thought about that, his like intensity was amazing. You know what I mean? And then even the intensity prior when he was telling like his like just like a villain, super villain, telling his master plan he had set up like it's one of those things. Like I said, when you see an actor, you especially if you typecast them in a role, then you're always going to see him that way. You know what I mean? And I mean, prime example is like this is just going back to something else. I'm seeing Samuel L. Jackson in a different light when he's doing something like Secret Invasion because it just doesn't feel like the same old Samuel L. Jackson. But the point is when you take yourself out of a role and make yourself not be recognizable, that's a prime example. Like, for example, what's his name that played Truman? I didn't realize it was, what's his name playing President Truman. And when I realized, I was like, oh, like even the makeup. I guarantee you this movie's going to get some awards for the makeup and design.
Yeah, it's
I feel
possible
like,
because it's
yeah.
all practical effects. He used zero
Mm-hmm.
CGI throughout this whole movie.
And I love the way he did it. It looked really good and
Yeah,
everything.
yeah,
Like,
I think
yeah.
visually the movie looks great. I love the black and white scenes.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
like all of that. I just really dislike the fact that he chose to do it non-linear because it doesn't help the movie. It hurts the movie, if anything.
I get it.
This is probably my biggest issue. So I'll give you the three. The number one is it
Okay.
didn't need to be linear at all.
Okay.
Number two, there's kind of four. Number two is the sound. Okay. It sounded amazing, but it constantly had the score playing. Like it never stopped from the beginning of the movie to the end of the movie.
Really?
And it kind of makes it feel like a montage, like a never-ending montage, because no scene is like finite. So you cut into these little cutouts that are like 3 minutes long, and then it doesn't start or end. You're just in the middle of it, and then you leave in the middle of it. And it's like a
Well,
constant montage.
Well, I get the montage thing, but I will say this: the sound I didn't hear it that much. So maybe it's based on the environment you're in because the soundtrack it wasn't
Well, the
overwhelming or
people who
over
I know who've
powerful.
seen it in IMAX said that they couldn't even hear people talking for a lot of the movie.
Really? See, it
Yeah.
was totally different from me. Like I didn't even barely hear the
I could
soundtrack.
hear people talking. I just
Yeah,
found it odd that there was a song playing
I had no
consistently for
idea.
the entire movie.
I
Anyways,
never noticed it.
digress.
Yeah.
My third thing is the dialogue was odd. At sometimes it was really good, and sometimes it was just strange. And then the fourth kind of one is the movie was just too long. And I think there was a lot of
Okay.
unnecessary stuff, but also that didn't really hurt the movie for me at all.
Well, Well, as far as length, it doesn't bother me in length. I actually got caught up into it. I didn't realize it.
Yeah, it's an
But
interesting movie. Like the
yeah,
story is genuinely interesting.
well, that's the thing. Again, environmental wise, like if I was sitting at home, because again, me and you both definitely saw it in a different environment. So when I was in that environment, it was great because like at one point they turned the lights on the theater, and it just made me think of the whole TikTok trend with the other movie that's been happening where theaters are messing around. But everyone was looking around like, what? So there was literally a scene that we just missed a brief part of it because everyone was just kind of looking like, why have you got the lights on? That kind of thing. And it did take us out of the moment and everything. But it was only obviously 30 minutes into the film, so it wasn't something like that was absolutely catastrophic. But my point to the whole thing is this: it's funny when you watch this movie, if you're not an avid movie fan in general, to go out in theaters and know your directors and know your actors. This is a movie I feel substantially people are going to fall into that trap because they're not going to think of this. They're not going to think of Memento or something like that when they watch this. When it comes to the scattered, placement of time and everything, they're just going to think it's something new to their world in that scenario. And so, in that aspect, maybe it might be entertaining not knowing the Nolan aspect as well as the mental aspect and all. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Well,
I feel like maybe
he uses nonlinear storytelling in like most of his movies.
yeah,
At least to some degree, right? Like Tenet is like very deep in it. Interstellar has a lot.
mm.
But it's just like this is not the movie where you needed it. It
No, I
just
get it. I get
added
it.
for the common moviegoer. I promise you, at least for the first 30 minutes, they're gonna be like, "What the hell is happening?" But then when you
That makes
realize
sense.
that it never stops happening for the whole movie, you kind of just catch on naturally, right?
Right, right.
But it's like so in the beginning, it's going between 4 points. His early life.
Yeah, my Alexa just went off. So
Oh,
anyway,
she
continue.
likes you. I was like, what
Yeah,
is
right.
that? Um, it go Oppenheimer's early life, his time that he's like getting ready to create the bomb, his time after the bomb, and then his court trial. That's like what the spots that it's hitting.
Mhm.
Then it kind of fades away from the mid the like ending point, and now you just have the trial, the middle point, and the beginning point, and it's cutting between all the scenes. But then it kind of brings back this other point where it's after the trial, and then before the trial and during the trial. So you have 5 cutting points, and then those go away, and it goes back to 3. And it's just like you didn't need that. It
Yeah,
was
yeah.
unnecessary. It doesn't
I don't know.
kill the movie, but if you gave the movie a better flow, that was my issue. The flow of the movie, it doesn't
Mm.
it didn't click with me.
I get it. I get it. And see, that's the thing. I'm guessing that's just it's kind of like again same boat that I'm talking about, and I didn't really think about it until now. Me and you are so used to that I figured maybe we're just looking too deep into it. Because you got to think that this isn't the first movie to establish this kind of continuity when it comes to making a film. You know what I mean? It gives that suspense. It's like I know what Nolan was trying to do. He was trying to give the idea of suspense when it comes to why is Oppenheimer in trouble? Is he a spy? Like it was like
But see,
trying to
you could
set
have
a
kept that. That's the part I wanted you to keep with the
yeah,
flashbacks. It's the actual telling of the story didn't need to do that, because now I'm like, why are we back here? Why are we here?
yeah.
Why are you showing me this?
Well, the other thing is, I think it's a lot to do with the Robert Downey Jr. character that they did that because I think what happened is if you do that and you cut it the way you're thinking, you're only going to get the last half of Robert Downey Jr. So I think that's the reason why he cut it that way because
But
they
a
wanted he
lot of
wanted the
actors in
RDJ.
this movie are like that.
Well, no, and I get that, but the RDJ is a big part of this movie, so I think that's the only reason why. That's what I think
But
Nolan is doing. That's what
you
I'm
could have
saying.
had the whole second half of the movie be that instead.
Yeah, I
Anyways,
agree.
digressing from the point here. If you made it non-linear in terms of like how Pulp Fiction is, where you got like teases of things, but the breakups were longer, right? It was like
Mm-hmm.
showing me 10 minutes of something and 10 minutes of something. I get it. This movie is literally structured 3 minutes, 3 minutes, 3 minutes, 3 minutes, 3 minutes, 3 minutes, and it just keeps cutting. And it's like I wanna find out where this is going. Now I have to wait for 4 cutscenes before I can get back to that part again.
Well, I mean,
And like
again,
I'm being hard on it, right? But
yeah,
it's something I noticed, and I understand the character that Florence Pugh plays is a big thing in his life, okay?
yeah.
But if you remove that completely and just didn't tell us about it, nobody would have noticed. It doesn't affect the actual story. It only affects that one moment where he looks at the wife and they're fucking in The
Well,
Office.
well, yeah. See, here's my thing. I get it. I get it. I'm not mad because I mean, she's an
No,
attractive
but it's
woman. I
like
wasn't.
it didn't.
Well, no, no.
It,
I'm just being a bias as a guy. I'm
I
agreeing
am
with you though.
being
Yeah.
non-biased as a non-perv. Um, it just that scene is the only one where she affected that moment because it was
Yeah.
like the wife was mad that he did it and he was upset that he did it and he missed her and the wife understands and there's like all this like loop. I get that. But then it's like the rest of the scenes kind of like him meeting her was like a 4 minute scene that was like just to have sex and then show a book.
Well, here's my thing. Here's the thing. I miss the whole idea of her. What I'm saying is I'm agreeing with you 100%. Here was the one thing that I felt like was the missing part. If they would have kept the wife mad in that whole situation, then I feel like her role had a bigger part to that leading up of
Yeah,
her looking at
that's
her husband
fair.
thing. Because the problem is this: if you take her whole scene out, then she just gets mad. But she could have been mad about anything else. You know what I mean? She could have been mad about the way he remembered the whole handshaking thing that literally led into another her angry at him situation when he shipped that guy what's his name's hand, and he's like he fucking betrayed you and you're shaking his hand because you want to be this martyr and everything. And it's like, okay, that right there is a prime example for you to be mad at him. Like the her role, if you cut that out, you're right, you probably could have brought this movie down to like 2.5 hours, like, or at least 245 or something like that, because I get why it's not there. Honestly, it feels like it's more eye candy and also trying to show that he has flaws. And I think that's maybe what the intentions
But
were.
and this is not a thing for Karen because I saw people try to make this point and it was really stupid. That oh, in real life he was a jerk. Why would you make a movie based around a jerk? But like, how many movies do we have based around like piece of shit jerks? The Wolf of Wall
Yeah.
Street, good example.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, uh, I feel like they they didn't lean into that enough. You do get like glimpses of it, but it's too subtle for most people to catch it. Where he's like you said, the wife's like, you just want to be a martyr because he
Mm-hmm.
did. He was
Yeah.
desperate to be popular and famous and if it meant stepping on other people to get there, he was willing to do it. But then they
Mm-hmm.
add that one scene where it's like, oh, he was protecting that guy. In real life, he probably, if you read about him, he probably wouldn't have done that. He probably threw that guy under the bus right away. That was the communist.
Well, see, but that's the other thing that I was a little bit confused about. Like, okay, the word Heisenberg is very popular, not even just through Breaking Bad, but just through the whole story of this
Yeah,
whole story in
Heisenberg was a
general.
scientist.
Yeah, and what made this movie like step out for me, like for example, like seeing Einstein, things that nature, like that's great. I didn't know that he was a part of this Oppenheimer storyline. It's great. I mean, if that's even true, again, that could be fabricated as
It
well.
is. They wanted Einstein to do what Oppenheimer was doing, but he didn't want to be part of a war.
Which makes sense. I mean, I can see why Einstein would do that, but that's my whole point right there. Is like, I actually enjoyed the guy that played Einstein. I think he did a great job of it. I don't know who
That's
the
Dr.
actor is, but
Octopus.
oh, that's wait, really?
Yeah.
That's in Spider-Man the movie.
Yes, in Spider-Man the movie.
That's
No,
what's
Spider-Man
his
the animated movie where it was a woman that was Dr. Octopus. That one. Funny.
no, no, but I'm saying like
It's
he
Alfred
did that.
Molina.
That does not look like Alfred Molina.
Yeah, he's a good
Really?
actor.
Wow. See, I had no idea. I literally had no idea. He did a great job. Like
Yeah, he's great. It, it's
well,
it's it's I like stuff like that. The relatability between the characters when he talks to him, you realize like what he's saying. When he figured out the theory
mm-hmm,
of relativity and that kind of stuff, he realized that he screwed up by giving stupid humans this information that they didn't need because it ruined everything. And by
mm-hmm,
creating the bomb, that they used his theory of relativity to figure out how to do things like this. Now that he's created the bomb, and now everyone has access to this information. So
mm-hmm,
now that's what his whole the whole point of the movie is. That's how he why he feels guilt because he's changed the world forever now. Because now everyone has
mm-hmm.
access to this stuff when he should have just never created it.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. And see, that's the great story about that. But like even the whole Oppenheimer thing, I no recollection outside of Pearl Harbor and Hiroshima and those small bits that hopefully a lot of humans know. If you don't, you at least sit down and read a book or watch a movie outside the Marvel universe. Anyway, I mean seriously, I'm being honest. It's one of those situations. But that's I mean, again, it's one of those movies that I'm glad I didn't go in knowing too much because I feel like if you know too much, you're gonna really tear this movie apart. You know what
And
I mean?
I'm gonna have to agree with what you're saying because I didn't know everything, but I knew a lot, and going into this, it was kind of odd because it doesn't tell you anything new. Like
Yeah.
it's very baseline, like Wikipedia page, but it's told not the nonlinear way, but the way the story's told to you is very interesting. It had me pulled
Mhm.
in, right? Like even though I
Yeah.
knew that stuff, I was interested to see it. I didn't know all of the playing characters that come with it,
Nope.
but it was I found it to be a genuinely interesting movie, and historical accuracies aside, it's pretty close. I just think they tweaked people's character a little bit, like their personalities to fit a movie,
Mm.
right? Because like I said, he Oppenheimer was a well-known jerk, and they kind of, instead of making you feel like he's a jerk in this, they kind of play it off like try to make you sympathize with him. Um,
Well, well, it's funny. For example, I don't know how deep this story goes, but let's use Rami Malek as a prime example. Short role in this movie, small role, but like I don't. I feel like Rami Malek as an actor and as the character in this movie gave it more depth than it probably was in real life. You know what I mean? Like I feel like that character probably didn't have as much interest because of who portrays it. It's like it's a weird thing when you watch these movies and you see these people act these characters, and when it's the main character, you're like, oh, this is maybe close to a little bit what he was as far as like personality wise or something like that. And then you have all these other characters that honestly, there was times I feel like some of these other characters, and Rami Malek is a prime example, they stole the show in their moments. You know what I
oh
mean? They
yeah,
took those moments and did a great job of saying, I'm here to do this role, but I'm gonna make sure I knock it out of the park. And I mean, like for example, what's his name playing Truman? I forgot his name. Um, uh,
oh,
uh, uh,
Gary Oldman.
yeah, Gary Oldman. Again, I did not know it was Gary Oldman. Again, same thing.
I
Albert
did right
Einstein.
away. It looks
I
exactly
said,
like him for
well,
me.
see, I was looking at him and I was going, who is that? And it was my friend that said Gary Oldman. But how am I again? Christopher
No,
Nolan.
but
He's
they did a good like as the people were aging
mm-hmm.
and you saw like the makeup jobs they were doing, it was pretty good.
Well,
Um except one. I don't remember who it was, but the very first guy that comes to shake his hand when he wins that award, you see the back of his head and it looks like someone like glued a bald patch onto his
I
head.
never noticed that. I
Yeah,
never
I
noticed
thought it
that.
really stood out to me. I thought it was fucking like strange as hell. But
And,
yeah,
and
otherwise it looked really good.
and again, it's funny. I feel like Nolan's a lot like Quentin Tarantino when it comes to casting. Is like I've worked with this guy. I really like him. He'd be perfect for this role. So
Yeah,
like
we
he's
got all his
hiring.
main people, Gary
Oh
Oldman
yeah,
and Cillian Murphy and all those
which
guys.
that's one thing that people always think is weird, but at the same time, it feels like it brings its own charm now. It's kind of like the whole thing, like I said, with Quentin Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez, they have their own actors that they bring in for these roles, and they keep bringing them back and
Yeah, it's
everything.
the
And
Scorsese thing, right? Like
yep,
Robert
yep.
De Niro and Leonardo DiCaprio is in every movie that he makes. So
Yep, exactly. So, but I mean, again, that gives it the charm. But again, I think again, outside of again, we gave it a good review. We're just
no,
getting
but
you to
this
understand.
is reasons why I didn't give it a 10, right?
Yeah,
And I
exactly,
think
exactly.
the general consensus on the internet seems to be either people of there's two groups, and one group is very small, but they're like, oh, this is a 2, this movie sucks, it's a 2. Like I don't know how you watch this movie and you think it's, there's no way in hell you can watch this movie objectively and be without hate in your heart for Christopher Nolan or whatever. And I'm not even that a big monster Nolan fan, but and give it less than a 7. There's no
Well,
way I can imagine that.
well, even Caleb brought, or my friend, he actually brought up to me in this situation. Sorry for the name drop, but anyway, I did not mean to do that. But anyway, he actually brought up that I've been focusing so much in the Marvel Cinematic Universe that, or Marvel and just comic books and video games in general when it comes to movies, that I've taken myself out of what I brought me to the movies in the first place when I was younger. It wasn't even just like, yeah, I had my kids' movies and the things I loved, but there was always those little movies that, like we were talking about Kubrick movies and things like that when we were having this conversation, and we were just talking about how people don't get to see these movies because they don't have the flair, the special effects these new movies have. And I'm like, you live in that world and don't realize you need to sit down and look at movies like this and realize these are good movies that exist in the world for you to actually think instead of you just having a brainless thing. The way that we said is there's that whole Barbie Oppenheimer thing, and I was like, "How do you watch that?" And my friend said, "You got to watch Oppenheimer first, so you can have a palate cleanser, so you can be dumb for a moment and watch Barbie." And I was like, "That's totally true."
I actually think it works better the other way around.
Really, I haven't seen
Okay,
Barbie yet, but
we'll get to Barbie when we get there, but there will be a review for that as well. Um, if you're asking me which movie do I prefer, easily Barbie. It's not even close. If you're
really,
asking me which movie is a better made movie, Oppenheimer is a better made movie.
okay,
Barbie
okay,
is such a good time, and it has such a good message. It's a little bit overbearing at times, but the acting is so good. The visuals are so good. It's hilarious for the whole movie,
really,
and
wow.
it really it's one of the best comedies of the last like 5 years for sure.
That's well. See, here's
And
my thing. Again,
I would never ever go back and rewatch Oppenheimer. I'll just be honest, ever.
well, here's my thing. I wasn't expecting that with Barbie just because it's Barbie, but at the same time, I did have conversations with people when I said I was going to I was going to watch Barbie later tonight and do all that kind of stuff. And I said, these are people that haven't seen the movie. And I said, but the one thing I have to admit, Margot Robbie's a good actress. Even in her bad roles, she does a great job. Like, prime example, Suicide Squad, horrible movie. But again, she's the reason why they kept doing these
Well,
movies is
wait till you
because
see
she
how good everybody is in this.
really,
It's just like an acting clinic, man. When you get to like towards the end and Michael Cera's character becomes very prominent, it's just hilarious for the rest of the thing.
oh, see, now I'm gonna have to watch it literally after this. Then
You'll
I
like
guess, yep.
it. It's a
Oh,
good
okay,
comedy. If it's like the same thing I just said about Nolan. Okay, so there's two groups. There's a really small group that just clearly has hate in their heart for the director or the actors in the movie, and
right,
they're giving it twos. And then the majority is just like 10, 10, 10, 10, 10. It's not a 10. Not even, it's not
yeah,
even, it's one of the lower tier Nolan movies. But in my opinion, almost all his movies fall between an 8 and a 9. So they're
Mhm.
pretty like not too far off. Except Insomnia is like a high 7, and the following is like a 7. But
Yeah.
otherwise, all his movies fall between 8 and a 9. Barbie is having the same situation where it's just people giving it either 9s and 10s, or people just being like, this is a movie about for women. It's a 1. There's only girls in this movie. It's a 1.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know,
again,
it very much picks on that community of men on the internet that are like Andrew Tate fans. It really, really picks on them. And if you
well,
can find funny in that, then you'll really like that.
I mean, we're some sidetracking. I'll just say this real quick, and then we'll move on back to
Mhm.
the movie at hand. The Barbie thing. Again, when I saw the trailer, they said if you like Barbie, you're gonna love this movie. If you hate Barbie, you're gonna love this movie. And now it's starting to sound like they were right. You know what I mean? Like they just did a great balance when it came to it. So I can't wait to see it. I mean, again, these are two different movies. I know without even watching Barbie, these are way two different movies that you cannot compare to each other. Is
You
based
can't compare
on
them to each other. You
yeah,
can't.
exactly. But I'm starting to also realize this is a good time to have these two types of movies because, in these podcasts we do already these reviews, and 90% of them are something based on comic books, video games, something a little bit more
Well, we're
geek
trying to
related.
speak to. If you want to see all my reviews, you can go on my Instagram because I review every movie.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
if you're coming on here, I'm trying to give people what they want to hear, which is
Mhm.
the popular movies. Should I go watch this movie in theaters? Is this worth my time? Because if I give you a movie that's streaming, you could just watch it. It's not going to affect you, right?
Yeah,
Like you're not
exactly.
paying
Yeah,
any money to watch that movie. So it's like I try to avoid doing those. But these Barbie and Oppenheimer are massive. And what they've
yeah.
done for the box office, it was the best box office weekend in years, number one. And
And
it's
it's
like Warner Brothers' best ever opening weekend, I think, or some crazy something like
and
that. It beat
and
Aquaman and what was the other movie? Oh man. Oh, A Dark Knight. It beat Aquaman and The Dark Knight on opening weekend.
which is so funny to think about that because Marvel or comic book movies in general, like Marvel, DC, they always keep that upper hand and everything. Which again, Warner Brothers owns DC, but it's nice to see a weekend box office not focused on because I mean I'm not sitting here saying anything bad. We all love our
Yeah, yeah.
comic movies. That's why we keep doing these. But like it's nice to have that break. Like my life decisions, I've made the changes, which people know on my end what it is. You know what it is. That all the big changes I made in my life have made me want to take a step back and say, hey, like for example, I've been telling everyone this whole writer strike. I'm so glad, or this writers and actors strike. I'm actually happy it's happening. I need a break. And if you guys can make movies like Deadpool or all these other ones much better by giving it time, I would rather sit back and not have content, because we got plenty of content out there. They're just keep on churning stuff. They just want money. Well, guess what? You're going to get more money if you make good movies. And this is what prime example this week is a prime example. Oppenheimer and Barbie are a prime example of good movies.
The movies an event. And
exactly.
So apparently that Haunted Mansion movie is a really fun time as well. A lot of people are praising it, saying it's completely a great fun time.
Ninja Turtle movie, apparently we heard the same thing. That's about to come out as well. Like, I mean, that even gets me
and that's what I'm
Beetle.
saying. And Ninja Turtles is being treated like kind of an event now, the way people are talking about it. And you did that with Barbie and Oppenheimer, and that was the kind of thing you treated Flash like that. But as it was progressing to come out, they let it go. And I feel like they did the same thing with Blue Beetle. They got everyone hyped for it, and now that we're actually getting towards the date, no one cares anymore.
Yeah. Well, I think it's because, again, and that's the other thing I want to put out. And I hate putting this way, but even though, because I'm a huge comic book fan, I want my superhero movies. There's an oversaturation. We need a break from that kind of thing.
But if you like comic book movies, if you like any movies, like look at Barbie and Oppenheimer, the Barbenheimer meme, okay?
Yeah.
But people didn't just pick one and watch one. They all went to watch both, majority of people. And it's like, if you love comic book movies, go see the comic book movies. Because if you don't keep supporting them, they're going to go away.
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean? If it's what you love, I get it. People are getting fatigued, kind of. But there are good ones out there. And if we want to keep getting those good ones, we have to support all of them.
Yep.
When you let a movie like Shazam or The Flash or Blue Beetle or what was the Marvel one that came out recently?
Like
Guardians or Spider-Man. If you let those movies fail, we're not gonna get more movies.
Well, but that's the thing. That's something I'm agreeing on. The problem is, and again, I think Kevin Feige, and again, this is going into another podcast altogether. But my point is when it comes to all these movies, there has been like the oversaturation because it was just a competing field. I think people are starting to realize I'm not going to support movies, and Quantum Mania was a prime example. I'm not going to support movies that are not good because
you nailed it. I said it wrong. You nailed it.
Yeah.
When you don't support movies, like it's a completely opposite thing. So if you want more DC movies and you don't support them, you're not going to get more. That's how I should have said it. And if you keep supporting Marvel's garbage stuff that they're putting out, they're going to keep putting out more garbage. Putty said it better than I did. Okay, so just forget what I said in the beginning and listen to what he said.
But that's my thing. It's because I'm also learning myself. The thing is I've made life has to change no matter what. I'm so happy the world we're in, to where things that I grew up with that were my childhood love, whether it be adult things or kid things, are getting that love they deserve now. Like, for example, people are talking about and they go, can't believe video games, like, for example, they're putting out all these video game movies or TV shows like Twisted Metal and stuff like that. And I go, well, that's because, you see stuff like what was it, The Last of Us actually being a good series.
And people are saying Twisted Metal is like a really fun watch.
And that's my whole point. People are like, how is this happening? I said, this happened before, guys. Think about it this way. Back when comic book movies first existed, comic book movies were good, but then everything was shovelware. You know what I mean? Like Tank Girl and all these other movies, like they just put them out because Batman was successful. Well, then all of a sudden people said, no, I want my movies, my comic book movies, to have actual substance and plot and thing. And we started getting better movies in the Batman series. Suddenly we started getting better Marvel movies. It became that passing. Now we're starting to start to see the same thing with video games. We got horrible video game movies, and we're starting to see a pacing of like, okay, we want to actually put that work. And I see things even happening with the toy field. Transformers has been
and that's horrible. The thing I was just gonna say. I was gonna wait till you were done, but the toy world, we started finally getting quality out of it, but now it's just shovelware. Like what you see, like the slate of movies coming out is just too much. Like I don't need a Rock'em Sock'em Robots movie. I don't need a Magic 8-Ball movie. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Battleship is a prime example of what you do not do.
It happened, right? We got Transformers, then we got all shovelware. Then it started getting better again. We got your Lego movie and stuff like that, and we're like progressing. You got Barbie now, but then you see the slate of stuff coming out, Funko movie, all this stuff, and it's like, we don't need this.
Yes, it was because the thing is, it's the same thing that it's a repeating pattern. Pop culture fun. Like, for example, I thought about it. We got in comic books, we got in video games, we got in action figures. What else is there left? Are we going to finally get the Beanie Babies movie? Like, I don't
Yeah.
know where they're, but that's my whole point. There's no other medium we can go to now because
Right
we had,
now, the medium that's emerging is video game.
well, no, and that's what I'm saying. That's where it's going to do good and actually win
Yes, because
awards.
it's in the good point still.
Yeah. So that's my whole point.
We got about
Is
7 years of good video game movies.
if we finally get to the point where the toy lines are good movies, then the point is
But
where
we
do we
kind
go
of already
next?
had that, right? Like as
No,
good
it's
as they could
starting.
be. You had Lego, you got Bumblebee, you got the new Transformers movie, which is pretty
Sure.
good. You
Is
got
it?
Barbie. I feel like it's going to be hard to go anywhere from here except down. You're probably still going to get some quality. I
Yeah.
think the strongest, like I said, the strongest area for us to grow out of like fandom stuff is video games right now because it's so
Well,
rich with stuff and it hasn't been done well.
I agree. And see that's what I'm concerned about is we're at the comic book world, then we're progressing in video games and action figures. Like, where's next? I don't know. You know what? That's for a podcast ourselves. What's
That's
the
for a
next pop
podcast
culture
ourselves.
thing?
Watch
Yeah, I mean,
Oppenheimer. We're leaving now. Go check out Putty's channel, and you know what? Peace out.